Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Hannah Booth and I'm the Communications Manager here at Moorepay. It's my pleasure to introduce the topic to you for this session, which is HR Essentials, Managing Stress in the Workplace. Before I introduce our host for today, I have a couple of housekeeping points to run through. We have over 300 registered attendees for this session, so to keep things manageable, the mics are muted. But that doesn't mean that you can't ask questions throughout the webinar. You'll see there's a chat box and a questions box within the viewing panel of GoToWebinar. You can use the chat box to let us know if you're facing any difficulties viewing the webinar. In preparation for the Q&A session, please post your questions in the question box throughout the webinar and we'll answer as many of them as possible at the end of the presentation. We're keen for you to get as much out of the webinar as possible, so please don't hesitate to post your questions. In terms of the structure of the webinar, I'll begin by providing an overview of Moorepay for those of you who aren't familiar with the organisation. Then I'll introduce our host for today, Carl Hardcastle, and after the main body of the session, we'll come to the Q&A period. Firstly, I'd like to introduce Moorepay as a business. I'm conscious that not everyone on the webinar is a customer of ours. We're a payroll and HR solutions business. We were established over 50 years ago and have 10,000 customers across a range of industries. On a monthly basis, we produce approximately 500,000 pay slips and we handle around 12,500 payroll and HR queries. Essentially, we're the market leader in HR and payroll services to small businesses. The wheel summarises the products and services we offer, and if you'd like to find out more about us, go to moorepay.co.uk, where there's lots of information on our services and solutions. I'll now hand over to Carl, who will take you through today's topic, managing stress in the workplace.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Good morning, everybody. I'd like to wish you a warm April welcome to this morning's webinar. If I can just, before we start and before I introduce myself, if I can just reiterate Hannah's point there of, yes, we're keen this to be a two-way exercise. Yes, of course, I've got lots of lovely slides for you to look at. But again, at the end, there's a Q&A session. And often those can be the most useful because I am aware that sometimes kind of presentations can be a little bit sterile. The Q&A session at the end, hopefully you've got some good questions and I can either answer them direct at the time or alternatively, if it's something personal, I can take it offline and get back to you later. Likewise, what Hannah said, this presentation and audio version will be available post presentation. So don't feel like you've got to make thousands and thousands of notes this morning. You don't. It will be available later on as a resource if you should need it. Okay, on to myself. I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on this slide because you've certainly not tuned in this morning to hear about me and my CV. I've worked with Moorepay now for coming up 10 years. I have a degree in law and the CIPD qualification. So I've kind of got a foot in either camp of HR and employment law. And I work as part of the employment law team, mainly to be found on the advice line. The advice line is a service that runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days of the year. And there we give out fully qualified, fully insured HR and employment law advice. Okay, I promise you not too much time on this slide. So, Hannah, if we may just trick on to the next slide, today's agenda, please. Okay, why are we doing what we're doing today in April? Well, April is the Stress Awareness Month. It is something that we see more prevalent, more of that later. So I thought I'd take round about 30 minutes, 40 minutes to take you through what it is, how to identify it, and how to deal with it. But again, let's look at today's agenda in a little bit more detail. The first issue is, what is work-related stress? I'll come on and cover that topic. It's important as HR professionals you can identify it. And more importantly, what are the causes of work-related stress? We'll spend briefly looking at some time at that. And I want to chat to you about the differences between pressure and stress. Pressure, we all have pressure. We've all got to get that project in by deadline. We've all got to return the monthly accounts. Actually, pressure is quite good for any business. There's certain key targets to hit, key milestones to hit. It's important that they're there, and that actually can be a good thing. But when pressure turns into a stress, it becomes a bad thing. The fourth piece on the agenda this morning is the law and what employers need to be aware of it. I am aware I'm speaking to a lot of HR people this morning, and I am aware that if you knock on your MD's door to her or him and say, oh, well, they're suffering from a lot of stress, the answer is most frequently, well, tell them to get on with it. Tell them to kind of, I hate the phrase, but, man up. It's important that people listening today and the wider community of senior management team understand that you have a legal obligation. You can be sued, you can be taken to a personal injury court, you can be taken for constructive dismissal, and I'll come on to the law in a little while, but the awards in tribunal can be extensive, and I'm talking 30, 40, 50, 60, 70,000 pounds. There's actually no cap on them, so it's important you need to be aware of the law and your responsibilities, how you deal with stress with your staff in the working environment. So I'm going to spend quite a bit of time on that slide, and I'm sure you can appreciate why. I'll then come on to identify signs of stress, and finally, I'll point out some strategies for preventing work-related stress. It is not always possible because we live in a busy modern world, but if we can, you as HR professionals, you as business owners should have some strategy in place to prevent it. Two reasons. The first reason is you're responsible employers even. And the second reason is that you need a defence if you are taken to tribunal, if somebody puts a personal injury claim against you. If you effectively have a head in the sand policy, then a tribunal judge will come down fairly hard on you. So that's today's agenda. But again, the presentation is a bit rigid, but we've got the Q&A session at the end. So if we can move on now, please, to the next slide. Thanks, Hannah. Okay, first of all, what is stress? Well, the Mental Health Foundation have recently done a survey and found out that 74 of all UK adults have felt overwhelmed or unable to cope at work in the last 12 months. So it's not something that's kind of a minority subject. It is not something that can be swept under the carpet. So as business owners, as HR professionals, we need to be addressing this. But first of all, we need to identify it. So what is work-related stress? Well, the HSE defines it as the adverse reaction people have to excessive pressures or other types of demand placed on them at work. Well, could really kind of equate to a lot of things, that, but if we just break it down a little bit further, work-related stress can occur when employees can't cope with such pressures and other manageable issues, okay? And again, if they don't have the skills or time to meet certain deadlines. Basically, can your staff refuse work, i.e., I've got too much on my plate, I cannot do this? If the answer is no, then you've got a pressure cooker there for work-related stress. Overwhelming your staff with work, overwhelming with the impossible deadlines, that is how to identify it. Bupa identifies work-related stress as how you feel when you have demands at work that exceed your ability to cope. So again, can your staff say, no, I'm too busy? Don't get me wrong, that is not a kind of a bottle out on your staff. You need to actually investigate that thoroughly. But indeed, if your staff do not have the ability to say no to incoming work, then you have got all the hallmarks of stress-related environment. Okay, so we can come on to kind of managing stress in the workplace. And I'm not, by the way, going to talk through the slides verbatim. That's certainly not how we do things. I'm going to talk around the issue, and that's because these slides will be available for you at the end of the process. But the CIPD, and I'm coming back to authoritative bodies and Simply Health, surveyed employers, and recently 2/5 of organisations noted that they had an increase in stress at work. What are the stress at work demands of the job? Okay, I pointed out control over work. Third thing, support from colleagues. Have you got a team environment? Can staff say, well, I'm a little bit busy, but I'll take it on and release some pressure off another colleague? Likewise, relationships in the workplace. I'm talking about professional relationships, i.e., is there a right support structure in place? And also, not professional working relationships. If staff had a fallout, is staff bullying other staff? That's another way to identify it. And again, the role of the business. Certain environments are more stressful than others. If you, and I'm being anecdotal now, and this is perhaps a little bit lazy of me, but if you work in a library, or you work as, for argument's sake, a riot officer in the police, again, certain roles and certain roles in the business will be more stressful than others. And again, that's how you can identify it. And likewise, change and how change is managed. HR professionals out there like to think that everybody loves change. Indeed, it's something that's a good mantra in business, always developing, never stay still in the water, always keep developing. But often it's how you manage that change. If you're introducing new systems, new software, new hardware, new products, are your staff in a position to understand how the change is going to be managed and how they're going to fit in with the training? So there's a good 6 points there to identify work-related stress. If you can see any of these 6 in your business that are not being managed correctly, are not being controlled correctly, then you may well have a problem. Okay, if we could just move on to the next slide now, please, Hannah. Now, I mentioned at the top of this presentation, there is a difference between pressure and stress. Pressure is quite a good thing. We've all been for that job interview. We've all had to hit a deadline. We've all had an article published. Pressure involves getting things right in the nick of time. A good example, I don't know if there's any golf fans out there, but Tiger Woods with his head over the ball, trying to make that last putt for $1 million and his Masters title. That is pressure. And of course, he sunk the putt. That's not stress. That's him in a pressure situation and him coping with that pressure. That is entirely different from stress. Stress may involve a variety of problems that lead to feelings of overload. A meeting that runs late, a long list of emails that need responses, looming deadlines that are not manageable. All of those are stress, not necessarily pressure. So if you can identify pressure and realize that that's not actually a bad thing, and if you can identify stress, then yes, you have a problem. So if you can move on to the next slide, please. Okay, I mentioned I'm going to spend quite a little bit of time on this slide because you have, of course, a moral responsibility to your staff. You don't need me to point that out. But moreover, you have a legal responsibility under quite a few laws. And don't worry, I'm going to keep this fairly light. I don't want this to turn into some kind of legal lecture where all your eyes glaze over and you're keen for it to end. First of all, you've got a duty of care. Yes, of course you have. These people are investing part of their lives coming to your work and doing your roles and what you want from them. So likewise, I'm sure you don't want to create an environment that's unpleasant and nasty and not rewarding to your staff. Of course, staff have to do things that they don't particularly enjoy. It's work. That's what comes with work. It happens to all of us. But you have a duty of care. The second of all, you have a legal obligation to investigate any issues. So if somebody comes to you and says, I'm really worried that I'm not going to get this done in time, or I'm really concerned that I've been overloaded with this project, or the production line's running too quickly, if you simply turn around and say, shut up and get on with it, you have failed in a legal duty. More about that later. So you've got an obligation. If somebody comes to you as a HR professional or business owner, you have to investigate any issues that are brought to light. The answer of shut up and get on with it can lead you into a lot of bother. You may investigate and find out that it's not the case, that the workload is perfectly manageable, but you will need to have demonstrated that you've done that. If you haven't, a tribunal judge would love the fact and would make great work of it in the outcome, the remedy hearing to a tribunal, if you've kind of skirted over anybody that's raised grievances. Okay, the third point on that slide is the management of health and safety at work regulations. We all seen adverts for personal injury, lawyers on the TV, somebody falling off a ladder, somebody kind of picking a box up and ricking the back, and then all of a sudden there's a claim that comes winging its way in. That's because and again, I'm not going to mention the legislation, but that law there, or the series of laws, says you have to legally provide a safe working environment. And yes, Stress can lead to anxiety, can lead to depression, and therefore, if you are not providing a safe working environment, you have indeed broken the law, and under HSE regulations, you and your directors can be prosecuted. And I'm sure we'll all agree that's far from being a pleasant experience. Indeed, even in certain extreme situations, it can result in jail time. So again, somebody coming to you to say, I need help, I need assistance, you have a legal obligation under health and safety legislation to look at that. So a personal injury claim for stress-related activities at work is just as valid as a personal injury claim for somebody falling off a forklift and breaking a leg. So it's important that you have a legal duty to treat it as seriously as any other illness or any other injury within the working environment. Okay, working time regulations. I'm not going to mention the B word, rhymes with Brexit, but European legislations came in 1998 to prevent your staff working in a dangerous manner. Everybody's familiar with we can't force staff to work for more than 48 hours a week. That's the popular one. But there are other issues involved in the working time regulations, and that's such as time between shifts, time away from work during the working day. This is not the environment for me to take you through that, but you have a legal obligation not to work your staff too hard. They need 11 hours unbroken rest between their shift patterns, and they need at least a 20-minute break should you work 6 hours or over 6 hours. Sorry, so if you work 6 hours, you don't have to give a break, but if you work over 6 hours, you have to give them 20 minutes unbroken. And again, we're coming back to overloading your staff. If they're not having the correct breaks either between shifts or on shifts, then again you are falling foul of the law and you're leaving yourself open to some form of constructive dismissal or some kind of litigation in the employment tribunal. The last one before we move on, the other obligation you've got, and I'm sorry to dwell on this and it sounds like all kind of gloom and doom, and I don't mean it to, but regretfully, under the Equality Act, long-term ill health issues can be classed as a disability. Under employment law, a disability is not the same as what a doctor would think as a disability. You wouldn't have a blue badge for your car and you wouldn't be regularly seeing the doctor, but you may qualify under employment law rules under the Equality Act. And that is if you have a mental or a physical condition, here in this presentation, clearly it's going to be a mental condition that is long-term and significantly impacts on day-to-day living, then under the Equality Act, not only will you may be in for a personal injury claim, but they may be claiming disability discrimination in the workplace. So again, that's why we need to take stress within the working environment exceptionally serious. Okay. All right, let's move on. Less of the negative stuff now. Let's hopefully we can get on the front foot and look to manage stress in the workplace. Okay. How to identify the signs of stress? You won't always necessarily see them first up because people like to mask their stress. I'm not coming in today, I've got a bad back. And it's really because they can't force themselves out of the duvet and because they don't want to admit that they've got mental health issues. There shouldn't be a taboo, but there sometimes is a taboo around mental health issues. So what you might look for are various signs of stress within the teams or individual employees. The first one is increased sickness absence and periods of lateness. Are your staff, is general sickness going, can't come in today, not feeling very well, anything unspecified? Are you seeing that increasing? Second point, clearly, is decreased performance. If you've got a highly motivated team that dance around like Tigger, and then all of a sudden the performance drops off, is it because you're overloading them? They're effectively coming to work tired, and you need to step in and address that. Another point clearly is higher staff turnover. It's a very competitive market at the moment in the jobs market. There's record or almost record low unemployment. So the grass may be greener for your staff. So if you see staff leaving and you've got a decent return to work system in place, return to work exit interview system in place, actually have a look. Are staff leaving because they've got increased wages elsewhere, increased opportunities elsewhere, or are they leaving because they don't really like what's happening in their working environment? Likewise, lack of motivation, commitment and confidence within the workforce. Have your staff got the can-do attitude, or is that slowly being beaten out of them, where they are regressive and are not as active and not as productive and come looking for you to work when they're probably just going to shy away from work? And likewise, a classic argument is when a department's under pressure, an organisation's under pressure, we start with infighting. Staff that have reasonably got on well previously, do we start to get arguments and disengagement within teams and colleagues? That is a classic example where you think, well, I've probably got a disciplinary problem because Joe Bloggs has said something rather nasty to Sam Bloggs. Is it that, or have you got a wider picture to say that there's stress in the department and staff, rather than doing the formal route of looking to management to address the stress issue, do they start fighting within themselves? Those are key areas where you can identify if you've got stress within your organisation or not. Okay, can we move on, Hannah, please, if we can? Okay, now clearly we need to put in some strategies. There's 3 slides. I'm not going to talk through these because I'm sure you can all read and you've all got access to them. But the individual primary level intervention is nip it in the bud. Okay, it's a little bit of a kind of a lazy adage, but it is true. If you get to problems quickly, nip them in the bud, they stop becoming large problems. I mentioned at the top of the presentation that here at Moorepay we run the 24-hour, 7 days a week advice line. If you have a problem, give us a call. Give us a call immediately. That stops things from festering. That stops things from growing. If you call us, we can chat through the issues. We can give advice. And more importantly, that advice can be insured. So if you come to us early stages, we help you through either all of the stages, whether that's a formal grievance, if it's a disciplinary for somebody, whatever it is, at key pinch points in the employment life cycle, such as redundancies and TUPEs, staff stress is elevated. Why don't you give us a problem? Why don't you give us a call and give us the problem here at Moorepay? But if you don't want to do that, the advice is still the same. If you're not customers of ours, clearly I'd like you to be customers of ours, but if you're not customers of ours, even so, I would take professional advice as early as problem, because you're going to target the problem at source, okay? That way around, as I said, nip it in the bud. And that's probably the one thing to take away from this slide is, as HR professionals, you do not ignore, you do not think it'll go away, you do not think, I'm too busy, I'll deal with it later. These things can escalate rather quickly. So that's primary level interventions. If we can move on to the second one now, please, Hannah. Needless to say, after primary comes secondary. I'm not going to talk through this, but the key is that you have something in place that allows your management team or your HR team or your supervisors, your production management, whoever, they need training in place that they can manage stress in their teams. That's vital. It's vital for 2 reasons. Is your management team should be able to observe a stressful situation and realise that they've got a problem. And also the second reason, it will offer you a statutory defence should you end up in tribunal. If you have a claim for a disability discrimination and you don't have any training or any refresher courses or any policies and procedures in place, a judge will come down on you like a ton of bricks. There's 2 ways about it. So even if you don't currently have a stress problem, then it's worthwhile, even so, putting in some policies, practices, procedures, and some training that in the event that one develops in future, not only can you identify it, but you have the key people in place to actually address it and address it in a professional and proactive manner. Okay, on to the tertiary level. Tertiary level interventions have been described as reactive strategies. So we shouldn't be kind of getting to this point without identifying it first. So typically right now, the tertiary level of stress, we will be dealing with occupational health. We will be dealing with long-term illnesses. We'll be dealing with burnout, depression, strain, call it what you will. And at this point, things are now very serious because you're possibly at a tertiary level. You're now falling foul of possibly the law, so the reactive strategy is to deal with it and deal with it quickly. We can deal with it here at Moorepay, so come and help us. But again, if you've got staff on long-term sick with stress, depression, they may well or probably will be covered by disability legislation. So it's important that you do not ignore it and let things fester. I promise you there's no situation so bad that you can't make it worse. So on a tertiary level, we need to reduce negative impacts and heal damages quickly, and we need to do that by addressing. Just out of interest, CIPD ran a survey recently, and the average UK working environment suffers from 5.9 days lost per employee per year. So that's over a week. And the number one reason for absenteeism is stress. So again, it is something that, as a start to conclude things, we need to take it easy. Don't need to take it seriously. So again, just to go over the main points before we get onto the final slide, is it's clear that you can identify stress. What does stress look like? Stress doesn't look like pressure. Once we've identified it, it's key that we do something about it. We can identify the reasons why. The law makes us treat work-related stress very seriously. There is severe remedies in tribunal. There are severe remedies in prosecution under the Health and Safety Exec. And likewise, we're seeing elevated personal injury claims. So it's important that you address it. And it's also important that if you can only address it, if you can identify it, and once you've done that, you need a procedure in place. You need to address it in a prompt and timely manner. And if you can do that, you'll not only have a happy working environment, you'll have a safe working environment. Okay, so if I can just move on to the next slide. And I'd like to thank you for your time this morning. I do realise it's not always easy to put some time aside. But in conclusion, why are we looking to address reduce stress? Well, staff turnover. It's always good to retain staff. You've spent hard money, good money training them, developing them. It's important that they stay with you. Sickness absence, talked about 5.9 days absence per person per year. And bear in mind that's average. If you go to somewhere like the NHS, it'll be significantly higher. But if you go to office environments, it'll be significantly lower. But whichever way you look at it, if your staff are at work more productive, then that's good for everybody. Likewise, it's going to improve staff performance and, again, less complaints and grievances. I am aware that there's not one HR professional listening to this whose stomach doesn't turn over when they get an email or a letter on their desk marked grievance. The less grievances, the less complaints we have, the happier the working environment. Okay, so again, thank you for that, and just moving on.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Carl. We'll now move on to the Q&A session of the webinar. Please continue to drop your questions into the question box and we'll pick them up and work through them. So I've got a few questions already that I've received through. So question number one, how do I protect my business against someone just walking out and stating that the stress of work was too much, then face tribunal proceedings?
Good question. The first one is you can't. You can't control people that can just stand up, walk out and say, I've had enough, I'm off. If your customers of ours, and that happens, give us a call immediately. But how you address it is you've already got strategies in place. If you can defend that in tribunal, that, hang on a minute, we've got a grievance procedure. That employee signed the policy to say they were aware of it. With regular open door sessions, with regular strategies in place. I've trained my team to observe and deal with stress. So hopefully somebody just walking out, their claim will fail, but only if you've got the right structure in place to defend that claim. If that person has not made you aware of it, then there's little you can do. But if the person has made you aware of it and you have not addressed it, then indeed you have a problem. That person can go to tribunal. And again, not wishing to put the fear into everybody, a disability claim has no limit on the compensation it pays out. I think the highest one over the last 4 years was just under £3 million. That's an extreme case, but the point I'm trying to get to, if somebody just bail on you and claim disability discrimination, it can be very expensive to defend. So it's important you have a strategy in place to stop somebody just standing up, throwing the keys at you and walking out. So hopefully that never happens. Okay, thank you, Hannah.
Thank you. And we've received another question through from John. He's asked, I have an employee that has been off work with stress for a month and this is causing my business disruption. What can I do?
Okay, John, if you're client of ours, give us a call because we can put procedures in place. It's a popular myth that if somebody goes long-term ill health and there's nothing you can do about it, you can. In that circumstance, what we'd probably look to do is seek their permission to write to their doctor. Ask their doctor some pertinent questions, and these are all kind of templates that we carry here, by the way. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. The doctor would answer those questions, and if it is a disability, then we have to make by law a reasonable adjustment. If there is no reasonable adjustment, we go down the capability route and possibly even dismiss them. If they're not coming back anytime soon and there is no reasonable adjustment to their disability, you can, with our help, dismiss them hopefully safely. And then, needless to say, recruit somebody in their place. So if somebody's off work for a month and it's causing havoc with your department, give us a call. We can certainly help. If you're not a client of ours and don't want to be a client of ours, you can be playing with fire. So I'd seek some expert legal advice as soon as possible. Dismissing somebody with a disability can be an expensive thing to do. Okay, Hannah, thank you.